Welcome to BrandBusters with your hosts, James Schwinn and Sean Lee. Together, we bust open the latest in CPG, retail media, and life, or whatever the we want. And for today's episode, we got something special cooked up for ya. Extra spicy. Take it away, Sean.
Awesome. Welcome, everybody, to episode 12 of the BrandBusters, and we have a treat for you guys today. We have the CleanAge brand with us, and we have Rachel Peters, who's the founder with over 15 years of CPG branding experience. She started CleanAge based on the needs of her own teens' personal care routines and has led it into leading retailers such as Target and Walmart. And we're also fortunate to have her VP of Sales and Operations, Brady, do I say DeLong or DeLonge? DeLong, Brady DeLong. I should ask that ahead of time. A veteran of natural CPG. He worked in some natural food businesses, along with a foundation in the culinary world. So very eclectic background that he brings to an awesome brand. And he likes to take things from 0 to 1. And in his free time, he's an avid cycler. So with that, we'll jump in. And we've done something a little bit different for this episode. We polled our audience and listeners on what questions they wanted us to ask you. And one of the most intriguing ones that I heard was, Rachel, you got to tell me about wakeboarding. It seems like one of our fans knows a little bit about your wakeboarding career.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Career is a really generous word. I will just say that. We are a boating family. And I actually think boating ties in with entrepreneurship better than just about any hobby you could possibly have, because nothing really gets you to solve problems and work together as a team quickly, like being on a boat with an issue. So I grew up boating, have a strong love for being on the lake, and my family are boaters too. Mastercraft Boats learned about my family's love of boating about 6 or 7 years ago, and we became the poster family for Mastercraft Boats for several years. Awesome. So if you go into the Mastercraft dealership in Cincinnati, if you look at some YouTube videos online, it's me and my little kids both wakeboarding and now wake surfing, because awesome. I value the health of my knees and I want to keep them functioning. And so, yes, you will definitely find us on the water a lot, which has led to many great friendships and what we like to call board meetings with business friends out on the water.
That's fantastic. I'm actually heading up to Lake Sunapee, New Hampshire right after this, but
Let's
I will
go.
probably not be wakeboarding or skiing for the same reason. I think the last time I did it, I felt like I was hit by a truck, but my kids will certainly be up and doing it.
That's awesome. No better place for them than on the water.
Exactly.
Really quick before we jump in, I've got to know what the trick is. So I haven't attempted water skiing or wakeboarding in over a decade. Once upon a time, I was 260, 270 pounds as well. What's the trick to getting up and out of the water? Because I'm trying to figure out, was it more of a body mass issue on my end, or is there any hack to actually getting out of the water?
Yes, there is. And the key is the boat driver and the teacher being really good. So, and also I will say, I've probably taught 100 people how to wakeboard and wake surf, and women have a much easier time because they let the boat do its work to pull you up out of the water. And most guys, especially guys who like to work out or like sports, try to muscle their way out of the water. And that's a fail every time. And so it's letting every component of the boat do its job in the right timing, gets a rider out of the water.
That's awesome. That was when I didn't learn how to do it until later in life, and that was my biggest problem. I would try to pull myself up myself, and until I learned that lesson the hard way, I didn't get it down.
It's really funny for people on the boat to watch that happen, but it's not fun for the person in the water.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I'm taking notes, and I appreciate the feedback. So.
Yeah, meet us at the lake sometime. We'll get you up.
Deal.
That's great.
Deal. Well, I think shifting from that rumor/LinkedIn, because we try to do a little bit of research ahead of it. You kind of talked about being product obsessed since, age 7. Really curious, what were the products and brands then versus now that really just captivate you and kind of got you into the CPG space?
Man, I grew up in a little bitty town in Texas, and there was a store in town. There was this guy, his name was King Ramy. I don't know why I remember that so many years later, but he took a trip to England and came back and opened a store, a Crabtree and Evelyn store in Tyler, Texas, in the middle of like late 80s, which didn't make any sense at the time. But he imported interesting bath and body lines from all over the world. And my mom would take me into that store even as a little kid. And he could tell that I really loved the products and hearing the stories behind them and where he sourced them from. He was pulling things from Paris and from London. And then he started to pull skincare from Korea, and that really got me intrigued. And so, yeah, it really did start at an early age with one little store in my hometown.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember I spent about 10 years at P&G, and I remember as a kid, like anytime I was like bored, I would just read the back of consumer goods products. Like, I don't know why I did that as like a
What
5 or 7
nerds,
year old.
right?
Yeah, exactly. But I loved it, and I loved like reading the claims and everything else. And I guess that's what made me a glutton for punishment to get into this crazy industry that we're in.
I think
But
that today when I walk down, my girls share a bathroom, and I walk down in their bathroom, and there's just caps and bottles and products everywhere out on their like dressers and sinks, and then in their shower. I'm like, where are you even getting this? I don't remember buying this for you, but they're collecting everything and just taking it all in, reading it and playing with it.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, so kind of talking about CleanAge and that you launched a brand. It's got a really great promise and story. And from my understanding, CleanAge was launched inside Verify Venture Studio out of Portland, Oregon. What's your experience been launching a CPG brand, starting inside a venture studio and then growing it? Obviously, it probably brings unique help and or challenges that come with that.
Yeah, definitely both. We started with this idea that teen bodies are different than adults, right? And how do we solve problems related to teen bodies with a very specific line of products? And because I was in the venture studio and my partners were, experienced professionals from Nike and other great CPG and consumer goods companies, we were able to go from 0 to 1 really quick. And that was to our absolute advantage. And I think that we had a lot of boldness to pitch where we wanted to pitch. Our strategy from the very beginning has been to be retail first. And I would say a lot of people who didn't have the backing of a full studio, a full team of people who were going to be there and be along for that first part of the ride wouldn't have gone straight to a Kroger to pitch, wouldn't have tried to go retail first because it would have seemed too overwhelming. So we got a lot farther, a lot faster because we came out of a studio. Now, in later days, as the studio model is still a little new. And for those who are tuning in who don't know what that model is, it's typically that a brand is incubated inside of an established business. That's the studio is a business that launches other businesses, right? Yeah. And so for this particular one that I was actually a founder of that studio. We consulted back to like the Nikes and skincare brands and things of the world and helping them launch products. But then we also tested and incubated our own startups. And so one of those we've now exited. And the next one that I worked on was CleanAge. And so that really got us a lot further, a lot faster because we had category experts on the squad from the very beginning, a team way over qualified and overpaid from what a typical startup could have started with. So we went a lot further, a lot faster. That also meant though, as a business, we started raising money to fund the business probably sooner than you typically would have. And because the studio model was so new, as we took the opportunity out to market, I found myself having to explain what is a studio, what is their role, why as a founder, I didn't own 100% of the business, myself, that kind of thing. And so I would say fundraising environment's terrible right now anyway. So fundraising took a little bit longer even than it should have because I was having to close that loop and do a lot of education on what a venture studio is and the value that they actually bring.
Yeah. Was it challenging as you're raising external capital to get everybody aligned? Obviously, if you're a single founder and you're going and raising and giving up some equity to raise money, it's pretty straightforward. You make the decision, right? At least as long as you have control. Having the venture studio, did that make it more complicated getting the studio aligned and a lot of more personalities, or was it pretty straightforward?
We set out with a goal of what our mix of investors would look like and really tried to benchmark back against that goal. So I would say that early upfront communication of what we were going after helped along the way. And you encounter all kinds of people when you're in the fundraising process.
Oh, yeah.
And some people, I think founders need to be reminded, and I have a good friend here in Cincinnati who reminded me of this early, like you also have the option of saying no. Like if somebody is an investor and they don't align to your values or what your goals for the business are, you absolutely have the option of saying no, and you shouldn't feel like you're at the mercy of the money.
Yeah, I think a lot of, especially first-time founders or people that are really excited to fund their idea, sometimes forget that. They see the money, but it may not be the perfect cultural fit or, values fit, and they'll just lean in and take the money, which probably then creates problems for them down the road. So that's great advice. But one of the probe on something you said, which is going retail first. It seems like, having been kind of in the e-commerce space for a really long time now, most brands from 2010 on seem to start direct to consumer, Shopify first, then maybe go to Amazon. And then when they had this kind of proof of concept or data of, hey, the product works, it's got a good margin, here's our follower base, here's the zip codes that are buying the product, they would take that to, usually Target first and then maybe Walmart, and kind of slowly roll that out. But it was almost always a D2C first model.
Mm-hmm.
When you guys decided in the studio to take the retail first model, what made you take that strategic approach, and how hard was that when you were taking it to retailers without any of the existing direct to consumer data that they were used to seeing?
Yeah, great question. So one of the main reasons why we decided to go retail first was because there were changes in the iOS happening right at the moment we were about to launch CleanAge. And we knew that consumer acquisition costs were going to skyrocket. Yep. And also, I knew from working as a consultant on brands before that, like, getting into the big brand and being on the shelf is a huge vote of consumer confidence. If Kroger said yes and you're there on the shelf, they're thinking like, oh, it's been through some kind of process. Like, I know that this is a product that I could try in my own house. And so for us, we really looked at but what if we didn't have to sink a bunch of investor money or our own money at that point into that first tranche of consumer acquisition costs, and we were selling deodorant, by the thousands instead of by the ones in the very beginning of the business. Yeah. And so it was a very interesting sale to our first retailers, and they were surprised. But over and over again in talking to retailers, I said, look, we're building this brand for you. This isn't one of those DTC brands that once they get to retail, they realize they can't make their margins and they're going to have to jack up the price on you. Like, we built the product and we built in the margins, and the way it looks visually on the shelf, everything is built to help it sell at retail. And that is the platform that we want to go with first. And we also just, over and over again, reminded them of our audience, which is this whole group of consumers that are your future consumers, and they're very opinionated and they share all of their ideas, teenagers, that there's no teen care on the shelf. You have all of this baby care, and then it just goes to the rest of personhood. Personal care is just every other person in the world. And it's like, there's a niche of people who really need specific care, and like, let's start addressing that now. And I think they, as I talked to merchants and buyers, they really resonated with that. Like, can we align to those teen values of better for you products, of more sustainable, of formulas that are actually made for them?
Which I think is really interesting, because I spent a few years, I was the Old Spice brand manager at P&G. And even then it was like our demographic was like 12 to 60 years old. So we were trying to be hip and young, but we were trying to be everything to everyone.
Everybody.
At the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I always look at when you look at a deodorant shelf and you're like, yeah, this is the rest of personhood. Should fit here, like all the way to, 80-year-olds are buying deodorant off of that same shelf. And it's time, now that we know more and we know that teen skin is more sensitive and that hormones are all out of balance anyway, let's not put them more in chaos. Let's provide something that's actually right for that whole consumer demographic.
Yeah. And going off of consumer demographics, I think it's really unique. Like, you noticed this niche, pursued it, and I'm assuming it's a growing addressable market. I think the teen demographic, and then also maybe more those kind of more elderly, are probably the most neglected consumer spaces. Heavy emphasis on parents, newborns, babies, toddlers, and then again general adults. For both you and Brady, what have been the most unique findings about Gen Z through building CleanAge?
Rachel, you want to go? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the early insights that we had, and we've had teenagers involved in our process from the very beginning. Actually, our original brand was done by a guy when he was still a student at the University of Cincinnati. So from the very beginning, they've been a part of what we're building. Was that they didn't want to shop by gender. They didn't want to go like, this is a girl's deodorant, or this is a boy's deodorant, or this scent is because of a certain scent, somebody should wear it or shouldn't. In fact, we're introducing some new scents here shortly, and I had them in my car yesterday, and a 12-year-old daughter opened one. She was like, "This smells like men's cologne, and I'm totally gonna wear it." I was like, "Yeah, that is a like reflective of this whole group of kids who are like both Gen Z and Gen Alpha. They don't want to be told like this is for you or this is not for you." They also vote with their dollars against their values, you know. And so sustainability, that's a value that they have that they will vote for with their dollars in the store. And over and over again, we tried to listen and then have those values show up in the brand.
That's such an awesome trend to hop on, because again, it's been years now, but when I was on Old Spice, we started to see that trend pop up, because at the time it was like you had Secret deodorant and Old Spice, and Secret was only antiperspirant, and they're like, why can't I just get a general deodorant? So a lot of our gender scents that smelled more gender neutral, like women, we found early on that women were buying them and using them because it was the only like non-antiperspirant deodorant available to them. But you know, established brands are so set in their ways and their buckets of this is, you know, men's grooming or men's skincare and women's skincare. It's hard for those established brands to pivot. So I think it's fantastic that you guys jumped on that insight, which will probably only continue to grow with
And honestly,
Gen Z and younger demos.
Yeah. And honestly, retailers that are picking up that insight are starting to re-merchandise their shelves according to that insight. And so they need bridge brands like us that will get them there in a smooth way, instead of just going like, oh, do we put every other slot as a man's or a woman's deodorant? That's not really a solve. It's like, oh, how do we bring in more things that are for more people?
Oh, that's cool.
And one of the other things definitely picked up on lately as we start to add more products to the catalog is the different, just how much Gen Z is into just scents in general. Perfume is actually like back on the rise. Body sprays are back on the rise. There's all these things that are just sensory, not necessarily performance related. So we've been seeing that. We've been definitely paying close attention to it as we kind of think about the product roadmap. So scents are very popular right now, and jumping from scent to scent. I remember like when I was 18 or 21, it's like you picked your cologne and that was like half of your identity.
I still like wear the same 2 colognes that I've worn since I was 18.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So Gen Z, Gen A, Gen Alpha, they don't seem to follow in those same footsteps. It'll be like, today's Tuesday and I'm a fresh kid. And Friday, I'm a citrus guy. So they just kind of switch it up a little bit more, layer in different scents. So that's
it's going to be great for you guys cross-selling units and trying to sell bundles or things like that.
Yeah. I love that layering trend too, because it's almost like they're personalizing their own thing, right? They're like, oh, I'm going to mix waves and citrus and see like what that smells like on me. It's really interesting, and things that like I would have never done when I was just wearing Teen Spirit as a kid.
Yeah. Well, I don't like to be told how to use things. Like they'll repurpose things and their behavior style. So it's like you might sell it as this, but they're like, well, that's not what I'm going to do with it. So you kind of get creative use cases. It's just it's fun to pay attention to it because it helps us be more innovative and think outside the box.
So based on what you said around kind of retail buying into this insight and creating bridge brands that might not be, male or female gender based or a little bit more gender neutral. Again, how do you raise enough awareness, or how do the retailers view you because most retail will measure units per store per week as their success measure, but if they're launching a new category, which may be a bridge category, how do you work with them to set the right expectations, or how did you to set the right expectations of units per store per week? And without the D2C presence, how do you drive enough awareness to try move the units off the shelf? Obviously, people will do some natural discovery, but just curious what your approach was, because that's usually the biggest challenge I see with brands that go into retail.
Yeah, totally. And we didn't always set those expectations well in the very beginning. Learned some good hard lessons in the beginning about like, hey, what do you guys expect, and how do we both work to get there? Our promotion philosophy has always been like the target kind of, not target the retailer, but like there's a bullseye like right in the middle of the aisle. Like if somebody is walking down the aisle, we need to be able to win that person if they're right for our brand. And so things like in-store displays and educating associates and things like that. Like I remember early on, I went to Portland and talked to all the Fred Meyer associates, and just telling our brand story, you could see the numbers tick up in the stores in the following weeks because they were excited, and they're the people who are in the aisles, day in and day out. And so we really started with that in-store at the point of sale. How can we win? How can we stand out on shelf? And then kind of worked our way out from there. And as our sales strategy has grown, that does look like there are some geographical locations that are going to pay off way more for us. And so how do we continue to invest in those communities with people? We're launching a pilot of a college associates program in the fall where they will actually go into stores and help make sure that we're merchandised and everything is running correctly, and they'll meet the store owners and also represent the brand out in the community. And so we're doing a lot of things that I kind of like to say we can only do because we're a small brand. Those giant brands can't like start these programs and have that personal touch. And one of our key values as a company has always been our humanity, and really working with retailers. That buyer who's in front of you is a human who has goals, who needs to meet their metrics, and trying to work for mutual benefit of both sides, right? That the retailer gets the benefit of having the brand, and the brand gets the benefit of having that retail space. And I think one of the things that surprised me the most when we went into retail is how buyers and merchants are treated poorly a lot of times across the industry. And we really kind of took a hard stance to say, like, we're not going to do that. We're going to work together and try
especially the big brands, right? It's like coming from a P&G, you got like a P&G, a Unilever, somebody that might own 60% of the shelf. Like those conversations are a lot different than coming in and negotiating with somebody who's appreciative and, small and like trying up and coming. I think the buyers like that change of speed from time to time.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty one-sided most of the time in those conversations. And I think, emerging brands on the other side can also, sit back and not say anything and not really participate. So a lot of times it's one-sided. They can go in either direction. And I think what we've really been able to do is just communicate and over communicate and align with those expectations. I mean, the biggest thing for us has just been expressing incrementality. So because we are trying to achieve that new, our goal is to create that new category, is these are consumers that you were leaving out of your sets and now they're shopping in your sets. Additionally, our price point is incredibly aggressive for natural products. So we appease the household shopper a lot of times. As Rachel mentioned, the display programs are really instrumental in what we're trying to do. We've executed those in multiple regions now, and we'll have more going out. So it's all like the little pieces, showing up at the right time, promotions during the right periods that, our shopper is in store, Pride Month, back to school time frame, holiday gifting, Earth Day, those types of things. So we've We've tried a lot. And then with our customers being on the younger side, we do see a lot of the more modern rebate types of programs that are out there. So the digital rebates or the online communities, the coupon platforms for product discovery and trial, we utilize those, get those customers into the pipeline, reserve them. And we're able to gain a lot of insights and reviews from them. So that's been one of the other reasons retailers have enjoyed working with us. We've ran a couple of campaigns that have resulted in thousands of reviews for our products. So we'll syndicate those reviews to all of our retail partners. So when we go and we pitch to a retailer, we can say day one, we're going to have 4,000 reviews showing up on your website.
That's great.
And they love that. So it's just going in with a plan on our side, and then also going in with our ears open and kind of like Rachel said, hearing what their goals are and that they're a person. So.
Yeah. Which I think is great. It's like, it's the human element of business, right? Like everyone wants to do business with people that they like and enjoy being around. And oftentimes I feel like when you're negotiating, people forget that, and it can make all the difference of being a joint business partner versus an adversary when you're in those negotiation processes.
Well, when you're an emerging brand, like you don't have much leverage, so you got to work with what you got. And most of the time that's just like, hopefully they like me and they like our plan and they think the brand's going to be effective, and they give us time to develop too. We're very clear that like, this is our roadmap. This will take time to develop in store. We have a long-term vision, and they're usually very receptive to that. So it's worked out for us so far.
So curious on the retailers, are there any that you feel like really stand out that seem to be very intentional about supporting emerging brands, whether it be a certain program that they have or just the receptiveness? I'm sure it's a little bit nuanced, might depend on the context there, the time of year, what the overall initiatives are, but any that you think would be worth calling out or recommending if there's other emerging brand listeners on today?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is known throughout like the Kroger ecosphere, is that Fred Meyer is amazing at working with new and emerging brands. And we'll even go so far as when we visit them, like bring like half-baked samples, like here's things we're looking at, and like set up a table that's like, here's all the parts and pieces of what we might develop in the next 6 months. Do you want to like have a say in the development process of this new thing that we're working on? And they love that. And they're very collaborative, and will help talk about like, hey, here are some trends that we're seeing across personal care, not just in grocery or mass retail, but we're also seeing them at some specialty retailers. Can we eke that trend into the shelves of a grocery store? And so they've been really fantastic to work with from day one. And I'm just super grateful for like the back and forth, right? The learning both ways from them.
Amazing. Well, special shout out to Fred Meyer team and Emerging Brands. If you're listening, check them out. Going off that, you talk about half-baked samples. If you're able to divulge anything today, I mean, anything on the product roadmap or line extension opportunity. And for listeners, CleanAge really doubles down on deodorant as well as toothpaste tabs. I believe those are the two primary product offerings right now.
Yeah. Did you guys ever go to Bath and Body Works? It's like, I don't know if like boys went in there, but like girls.
I went with my mom as a kid.
Yes,
I paid a ton of attention to it.
And
but
did your mom have like a scent that she loved?
Oh yeah.
Okay. And you like,
I think it was like a cucumber melon, if I remember, or
right.
something like that.
So every mom had a scent, and like that's what they got for Christmas or whatever. And every girl too who was going in like had a favorite scent, and they would buy like, oh, I'm gonna buy the body wash and the soap and the lotion and the everything in that scent. And really what CleanAge is getting to is like a modern day version of amazing scents that come in multiple products. And so we are doing a scent extension right now. We're doubling the amount of scents that we'll be carrying from 3 to 6. And then with that, so that will start in deodorant and then move to body spray, which, Brady kind of hinted at, because this Gen Z and Gen Alpha for sure just walks around in a cloud of fragrance all the time. And so we want to give them the ability to make their own cloud. And so those things will be coming out here shortly. And then we're looking at everything else that's really like body care related, and how do we build out these these amazing scents that you kind of want one of everything in your favorite scent.
That's awesome. Such a great insight. Like my Old Spice days, it was the same thing. It was like people would buy like the Old Spice Swagger, I think was our top scent, or like the Fiji brand. They would buy the deo, the body wash, and at some point we had shampoo, and people would just primarily buy their scent, and they became that was their thing. That was their scent.
Yeah, it's like little micro brands within the brand. So I think the other interesting thing is like deodorant. People don't love necessarily talking about their deodorant as much. So as we were like looking at the roadmap, we're like, we want something that is either visible or is like someone else is going to comment on it, or they're going to be proud to talk about it. So that's where like the body sprays really played into like it's just a more viral, just higher potential for virality compared to like a deodorant product. So we think that might hopefully is going to play into our hand and getting that distribution out on that product quickly.
That's great. One of the things that we have asked a couple guests are throughout the journey. Obviously, there are a ton of ups and downs. There's highs and lows. You win a retail account, you lose some distribution. Was there ever a point in the journey, whether it was from, a big loss or not knowing if you're going to be able to continue fundraising, where you had what I would call the oh shit moment, where you just didn't know if the brand was going to make it? And how did you get through that as an entrepreneur? And how do you keep getting up every morning and, putting your shoes on and plowing through?
Well, first, I never think we're not going to make it. I never go that far. It's always, how are we going to figure this out? Yep. I grew up playing tennis in Texas, so it was hellaciously hot. And I never thought, I could die out here. I was always like, how many points do I have to win to get back on top of this match? And so I think that mindset like carries on today to the entrepreneurial world. And yes, I mean, I think there was like a week in, was it September, that Brady and I like did not sleep. And it was when we were delivering our first
couple of truckloads to Walmart.
A few truckloads of product to Walmart for the first time. And we were in between, I think, our like third and fourth buyer or merchant for Walmart being hired in our process of onboarding with them. And so we had been passed from merchant to merchant and from replenishment buyer to replenishment buyer. And somehow in that process, which if anybody's applying for Walmart's golden ticket and is trying to get into Walmart for the first time, we won Walmart's golden ticket. And this was a piece of that. I'm happy to talk about that to them about the craziness that's on the other side of that ticket because it's not all just like, oh, yay, we'll sign a PO and ship you some stuff. It's a lot more difficult than that.
That's when you win, and then that's when all the hard work begins.
Yeah, for sure. But somehow, I mean, truckloads of product got on trucks, and after the trucks had left this, like we're on the road, we realized that the paperwork was wrong on every load of trucks. And so it was like, I mean, it made me want to throw up. Like
Walmart changed the PO numbers. And because there was an item number issue, because there was a case pack issue, it trickled so far downstream. And so by the time it got to the products on the truck, it was all these POs need to be replaced with new PO numbers, with this new item number. And so the buyer did not know that the product was already on the truck. And so they were like, we canceled this. We were like, no, please don't have to cancel. So we go into a what's it called? Troubled freight, I think is what they call it in Walmart. When there's
we all felt troubled.
We were very troubled. On the phone with like EDI people, on the phone with our consolidator, with Walmart. I mean, we had like one of the Walmart help desk people, Anna, like her direct line that like Rachel was talking to her, and I kept
my best friend. Yeah. Literally.
Yeah, we will advise if you are calling Walmart's help desk, call early, call in the mornings. You get later in the afternoon, it's not as good of an experience. Call early in the day. So that's a tip.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
I would say the Walmart piece, that one was pretty stressful.
Yeah, I think for our listeners, like some of the context here is when you're selling to different retailers, almost all of them have their own requirements about pallet labels, case labels, everything else. And if they change the data, like that PO number was probably on every case label you put on there, on everything you put on the BOL. So now all of a sudden you've got product that is going to get received and nobody's going to know what the heck it is because it doesn't match it with anything in their system. So this is like full on crisis mode for any brand, and usually one of the most complicated things to solve because it's never easy once it's on the truck or once it arrives at the Walmart warehouse and they don't have a PO to match it to.
Going to 42 warehouses too. Not like just one where like we could go or maybe make a phone call. 42 warehouses across the country. So
yeah, early on when we started pitching to retailers, it was still kind of COVID days, so nobody was in the office. And I remember an early buyer requesting some kind of change on our packaging, and I actually we were manufacturing in New York then, not in Cincinnati. And so I flew to New York, picked up the sample, flew back to Cincinnati, drove to the buyer's house and like dropped it at their doorstep. And so there have been moments where we're just like, okay, there has to be a way to make this work. It's not going to be the way that like I would have hoped that we had to do business, but you figure it out.
I mean, and that goes with the same. We just did a submission for 2 different retailers in the past 3 weeks where our goal was to have some of these new products ready to go for these pitches. And, there's a ton of variables that go into having those first samples ready. Yep. And, overnighting stuff from overseas and whatever you're trying to do to get these, packaging samples and whatnot in. So, I mean, it literally came down to the wire. I mean, we overnighted stuff on Wednesday for things that needed to be in hands by today. So we made it a day early. We got some buffer. So yeah, that's always part of the fun, I think. Just solving the crisis at the moment.
That's great.
So I've got to ask, knowing that if you go into an emerging company and trying to build something, you're inevitably going to face fires. Like, what are your personal rhythms outside of work that set you up to embrace these things without fear, without pause, just hitting it head on? Brady, I know you're an avid cycler. I'm not sure if that's still the case, but I know that was a routine at one point, but really want to know what you two do for yourselves.
Yeah. Biking for me is huge. Mountain bike and road cycling here in Cincinnati, both great scenes. So you guys come out and ride. But no, I mean, I think I have a wonderful family. I have just an amazing wife. We've been married 14 years. I've got 2 great kids. And we've kind of cultivated a life at home where we try to not sweat the small stuff. And we try to keep things super simple. And we don't really overextend ourselves. And we don't pack the calendar. We just try to enjoy the time we've got together. So my calendar is pretty open, and I've got a lot of flexibility. So I think that people can kind of let all of the extracurriculars pile up. Starts as like, oh, we'll do this on a Monday. Oh yeah, we could do this on Wednesday then. Oh, let's do this on Thursday. And next thing you know, it's like 7 nights a week, 7 days a week. You've got multiple extracurriculars, and then people are just like, where's the time go? It's like, well, look at your calendar. So I try to keep it as open as possible. And lately that's meant it's allowed me to work more because we've been super busy launching the new warehouse. But that's fine because I don't have so many other things that have kind of been that pile onto that. So at the end of the day, I still go off a ride, come home, sit on the porch, play Super Smash Bros. With my son, and just hang out.
Awesome.
Great.
I still play tennis. I play tennis at least once a week with a group of women who are like I aspire to be when I'm older. I'm probably the youngest in that group by 20 years at least. They're all former coaches and I have both high school and college coaches. And so it's super fun to get out there with them. I'm a hobby flower farmer too. We live in Terrace Park in Cincinnati and have a big field and start most days outside in the garden before it gets too hot right now in the summer. So all of those things are good. Also, like Brady, I have a husband who's an insane entrepreneur. He's like really, really great at running businesses. And so we try not to talk shop all day, every day, but we do kind of drift off of each other. I would say when things are going really good or bad for one of us, we can kind of like help in those processes. And for me, this business in particular, I've run a few businesses at this point, is really special because my kids are like interested in it. Like I have a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 9-year-old, and all of them this is the first business they've really understood and that they love giving input to. And they'll like, we're in this like studio space that's near my house, and they'll knock on the door and come in and sit down and have an opinion. And it's an informed opinion. And usually it's really great to hear what they have to say.
It's amazing.
It's fun.
Yeah, no, I think one of the things we've heard now with a couple of these interviews, and probably with James in our own lives, is it seems like something like usually like something you learn in sports in high school or college, like helps you persevere through all the challenges that come at business. And you never think you're going to fail. It's just like, how do I get back into the game? And same thing, like with Brady biking, I've biked and I've done marathons. It's like, you may have a bad mile, but how do you pick it up or like figure out your hydration to get back in it? I don't know if we'll call it a trend yet, James, but it seems like that seems to be the thing that is setting entrepreneurs or, salespeople or people in high stress jobs apart to help them compartmentalize and get through. But I don't know if you have anything else, James, but I think this has been a fantastic conversation.
I think, not to derail, I have two things to wrap up. I think early career lessons, and I want, especially from Brady, I think we met a few years ago. You're, I feel like, Chief Everything at Hen of the Woods, which if you don't know what that was, amazing chip brand. But what do you feel like what do each of you feel like you've been able to apply from early career, like to now in building a brand?
Yeah, so we just started kind of hiring, growing the team here in Cincinnati, growing a warehouse team, and like trying to coach them and teach them some of the things that I feel like I learned as I started to enter the workforce. And like chief among those things was in my culinary career, which is just like a sense of urgency, understand and thinking in like a system mindset. Like what I do is going to have an effect in all of these different places, no matter, whether you think about that or not, like it's going to happen. So starting early on, just being able to carry that with me is like just being able to think in systems and not even necessarily like cause and effect, because it can be 8 times removed. But it's just constantly just thinking in systems, having that sense of urgency and being able to like prioritize. In the kitchen, it's like your prep list is this big. And there's some things that like maybe aren't going to get done. And then there's things that 100% most definitely have to get done. So, and usually there's nobody telling you how to create those things. You have to develop that skill set on your own. So those are just some of the core things I think for me that I've kind of been able to carry with me throughout the career. Fortunately, I just also always had a work ethic. So I've been grateful for that. And I like my job. One of Seth Godin's one of my favorite Seth Godin quotes is like, amateurs do what they love and professionals love what they do. And I love what I do. I don't, wake up in the morning like I can't, excited about deodorant, but I wake up every day excited about solving problems, excited about growing a business, excited about data, and like just getting into the nitty gritty. Like I love what I do. It's so much fun for me.
Yeah. I think 2 things that have affected me the most in this particular role were frustrations when I was a consultant. And Sean, I mean, you probably are about to raise your hand and say I had these too at big corporations. One was, I love that startup culture, the meetings are 30 minutes.
No.
If I had to sit in another meeting about a meeting in a big corporation, I was literally going to bang my head against the wall. And so we try to keep things tight. It's like, you have 30 minutes, you should be able to say what you need to say, and we should be able to go on about our days and get work done. So we don't do meetings about meetings. And then also we try to make decisions based on the right audience, right? And so I think at those big corporations, a lot of time it'll be like, hey, I really think we should do this with the brand because my boss's boss is going to love that. And I think that's where big CPG really goes literally off the rails and stops connecting to their consumers. And so we, or as an early brand, could have been like, oh, we need to do this thing because that buyer or that buyer's boss is really going to like it or something like that. But if we kind of can hone in back to our consumer and say that what is actually really right for teenagers, it's going to propel us forward much faster with a higher level of success than trying to make decisions to impress the wrong person.
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic advice. I launched a brand at P&G called Zevo Insect. It was a natural insect brand. And we always ran into that. They're like, well, I think our general manager or our VP will really like this claim. I'm like, well, consumers hate it. So why don't we take the data of the claims that consumers actually like and let's put that on the package? Like, I'll be the person to say like, hey, GM, like the people hate your claim. Like, here's the data. Like, let's go do the right thing. And even in big companies, like, people are oftentimes afraid to say it, but if you have the consumer data, everyone wants to do the right thing with the consumer, but you just get so sidetracked with the meetings about meetings and trying to worry about what a 2-up boss or 3-up boss might think about something, when in reality, the people closest to the consumer usually know what's the best thing to do.
Exactly. The person closest to the problem knows what's best to do. And we didn't ever work together, but I tangentially worked on the rebrand of Old Spice super early on the site. And I felt like that was why the rebrand of Old Spice was so successful. Is like that team was not making decisions based on their boss's boss's boss.
Yep.
In fact,
Great.
they weren't even making decisions to protect their own jobs, which was, it's very like refreshing in a corporate environment. And so we try to keep that edge as like, let's keep doing what's right by our consumer, even if it's really hard.
Yeah, that team like blazed the trail, because the team that did the original like rebrand and launch, like a lot of them moved on and did some really great things outside of P&G. I came in probably a couple years after that, but that culture still remained. That the GM and the president of Beauty Care basically said, let the Old Spice people go sit by themselves in the corner and we won't intervene as long as they're growing. So you had a group of like 5 or 6 of us just making decisions, and the business was on fire and nobody was asking questions. It was, while every other brand was treated the exact same way, you know, let's have 3 meetings and big reviews. They were just like, Old Spice is working, so let's not mess it up.
That was, I mean, that was totally the case study too for I told you I was part of Venture Studio. We exited one company right as we were starting CleanAge, and that company is called 30 Second Dance Party. Now you guys all have to go look it up, and I will send you dance party buttons. But that was a company that we literally started and did the entire brand design all the way through advertising in a month, and then launched that company. And so there just weren't meetings about meetings. Like there was no time for that. We really like pushed through it. And because of that, the brand didn't get diluted. Like our original concept was still there, and the magic of the original concept was still there. And it was like one of the most exhilarating things I've ever built because of that. Like there weren't too many cooks in the kitchen. We were able to move really quickly and make decisions that we thought were right for the business. And so we continually try to do that around here too.
It's amazing. Well, James, I think with that, we'll probably end. I want to thank Rachel and Brady. Obviously, for any of our listeners, feel free to follow them on Twitter or X or whatever you call it. Friend them on LinkedIn. Follow our podcast. If you found value in this conversation from Rachel and Brady, share it with your friends, share it with your colleagues. James and I don't do this. We don't have a sponsor. We're not doing it to really promote anything. We like to have great conversations, and I learn a ton every time I have them, and we know our listeners do too. So thank you guys for joining. Really appreciate it. And with that, we will roll the outro and call it a day. Until next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.